In the previous video, we saw how by using operators, for example, for the plus sign, we can do some string concatenation operations. So for example, let's say that we had two variables, A and B, we added them together, and then we create another variable, which is the sum of those two. And then we wanted to print a message to the console saying like A plus B equals whatever the result, right? I would have to do something like this. I would have to say console.writeLine, and then I would have to write this very tricky and tedious like set of concatenations in line. So for example, I would have to say A plus, and I open double quotes, the plus symbol, close double quotes, another plus sign, then the variable B, then I open another, and then I just forgot that I need to add a plus sign here, and then I need another plus sign, and then the result of this, so that I could properly print the result of this to the console. Okay, this is fine. You see, I just got the message there. It's fine. It's just a little tricky. It's just a little tedious to have to like type all of this on and off, etc. It's just not nice to do, So before we go on, I would like to teach you a couple techniques that are specific to C#. Other programming languages have similar ways of doing this, but this is particular to C#, which is called string interpolation. And the idea is that there are shortcuts, or there are ways to insert values inside of a string in a better way, or in a way that is at least a little easier to write and sometimes much easier to read than doing it with just like by concatenating chunks of the string with the plus symbol. And the way this works is when you are, for example, using WriteLine from the console class, there's a technique that you can use, which is, let's just write the whole message. Okay, let's just write the whole message. Something is going to be equal to something something, but then what I'm going to do is I'm going to place placeholder sections that I'm going to write with the open and close curly brackets, and I'm going to number them. So I'm going to say something, which I'm going to call number 0, plus another something, which is going to be inside of curly brackets, and a number 1 is going to be equal to another something, which I'm going to label as the number 2. All right? And now, what I can do is, after that, I can open a comma, and then I can pass as arguments to this function the values of all the elements that I want to substitute for 0, for 1, and for 2. So for example, the first one would be A, the second one would be B, and the third one would be the value of sum. All right? And then, if I run this code, what the compiler does is that it takes all of these values and it replaces them inside of the 0, 1, and the 2 placeholders. All right? So this makes typing things a little easier and a little faster, and even reading this is a little faster as well. Okay, so this is called composite formatting, and it's a way of using placeholders to replace to insert data inside of strings. However, I don't really like this method too much because this only works for the WriteLine method. The WriteLine method specifically knows how to take multiple arguments, infinite arguments, and start replacing them inside of a string, inside of these placeholders. But it doesn't work generally for all strings. And even if from a readability perspective, it's also not that great. Because like if I were to insert something here now, like I would have to figure out what is the number, etc. So I don't really like it that much. So I'm going to replace this with a very similar version that is called a string interpolation, which works the following way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open and close my my double quotes, but before the string, I'm going to add the dollar symbol. Okay, and by adding the dollar symbol, what I'm telling C# is that this string needs to go through the interpolation process. And now inside of it, I'm still going to use the curly brackets as a way of replacing what's inside of the curly brackets with data. But in this case, I don't need to use numbers. I can actually just literally just write in the data type. So I can say, I'm going to write in this. I want the value of the variable A in here. This is going to be a string. B, I want the value of B in there. And then I also want the value of sum inside of this inside of these curly brackets here. So, and then if I do that, you can see that I still get the same result, 10 plus 5 equals 15. But definitely, this, I find it much easier to type and much easier to read. And the advantage of this is that this works anywhere. So for example, I could just create here a string called message and just copy paste this thing, because what this does is that it takes whatever is inside the double quotes and it interpolates with the values from the variables that we pass in, and then I can just now here use message. Okay, so I can use this technique anywhere. And also, even more interesting is the fact that inside of the curly brackets, it doesn't have to be a variable. You can actually write any expression that you want inside of those curly brackets. So for example, I could just save myself this computation by saying, oh, what I want here is actually to compute A plus B, make that calculation, and whatever the result of this, that's what I want inside of the string. And this still works, you know? So it's great. So I like string interpolation very much because it's a very elegant and very fast way of creating composite strings without having to go through the pain of like typing everything down and concatenating strings. So I suggest you give this a try. It's a really nice trick. It's a feature on more modern C# versions. So if you're working on some old legacy C# environment, you may not have access to this, but it's a very nice one. So I encourage you to check it out and to try it.